Today's video is brought to you by a guy who's saying shout out to the Seattle Seahawks winning the Super Bowl the other night. Also shout out to the Patriots, man. You know, they really overachieved this season, making it there. Was it a stinker of a game? Yeah, pretty much, but it went exactly how I said it was going to go. I predicted 33-10. It was, 29-13. Close enough, but also shout out to Bad Bunny. Great performance as far as his, messaging and everything like that. I know people get mad with the Spanish and whatever else, but if you just appreciate culture, messages, symbolism, and things like that, listen, you got to tip your hat off to the guy. And it kind of leans into what we're going to talk about for today's video. So I thought about doing this just as a regular topic video, but then I'm like, this is really a sit down couch conversation. So what I wanted to talk about today is books, reading comprehension, attention span, things like that. It's a topic that a lot of people have been talking about for a while now. The reason I was saying about it, I'd say like a couple of people kind of influenced me to make this video. So first one is I'm Anna Molly. I don't know if you guys know her, but she's a content creator that I like to follow. Not just for, her gaming taste. Some of our tastes don't really align or anything like that, but I like her short form content. I like some of the discussion she has. I feel like we are very aligned on a lot of things, as well as Mr. Matty Plays. I watch everything Matty does. He does Retro Rebound, which I really like, his own channel, and then he has Defining Duke with Lord Cognito, and they've both talked about reading as well as using or utilizing the library as a resource when it comes to gaming. And I was thinking about a few things. The first thing is, for me personally, growing up where I used to live in Asbury Park. A lot of people, y'all know it, but this was back when Asbury wasn't, this wasn't the 50s, and this wasn't where it is now, where they fixed everything up there. When I was growing up there, the boardwalk was abandoned buildings, barely any businesses, stuff like that. But when I lived down there, I actually lived like everything was pretty much in close proximity to me. My school, which was in my principal's house, small private school, we lived on the same block, just on the opposite end of the block. I could walk 2 to 3 blocks down to the library, which I did all the time, and then like 5 or 6 blocks down to the beach. So the library, though, what I want to talk about. So I mentioned Anna Molly. So what she had put up recently, which I've started to see blow up on TikTok a lot, is the fact that you can rent video games from the library, which I had no idea about. So growing up, obviously books were the thing, right? And then they started adding DVDs, and now you can get video games. And maybe you've been able to do that for a while, but I haven't been to a library in a while. So when I was growing up, I would go to the library, go to the kids section, read a bunch of Arthur books, Pippi Longstocking, stuff like that. They had the celebrity, ads, Shaq's creepy looking self in there, Missy Elliott, all that. But then I would also hop on a computer you got like an hour to hop on a computer. So I could play games I couldn't play at home because my computer at home could not run those games. I was using Windows 98 in 2003 or 2004. So, I would play RuneScape, Teen Titans, the fighting game on CartoonNetwork.com. They had that like Halloween game around Halloween time for UNICEF that was really good, like Codename Kids Next Door game. I had a lot of good times at the library. So what I did recently was I actually got a library card from my local library. This is the first time I got a library card in, I think, almost 20 years. The last time I got one was like 7th grade. And, I walked in, I seen a lot of different stuff. They had, of course, the Black History Month display. They had like 25-cent CDs. I seen Tatiana Ali had an album. I didn't know that. That was interesting to see. But then I went over to their gaming section, and the reason I'm looking at it is because even though, I've talked about collecting or checking out sales, backlog, like a million of these different things on how to save money or how to be selective when you're choosing what you want to game with. And the reason I thought about the library after seeing Anna Molly's video is because, listen, as things are getting more expensive, you got to think about more practical ways to game. We're looking at gaming as, okay, you don't have to buy it on day one for $70 or whatever, but at the same time, okay, you're waiting for sales, but you're still paying $40, $30. That starts to add up. Or even subscriptions, like, okay, they might throw a game in subscription, but like you're still spending money on that. So I think the library is a good resource for that. Even DVDs. Listen, I know people love streaming services for the shows and stuff. Some people wait for movies to come out on streaming services. They had some pretty current DVDs when I went. They had like, what was it, Civil War with Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons. They had a lot of the Marvel movies. They had Until Dawn, which just came out recently. Like, they had some stuff. Now, the only downside is for books, you can rent a book for, 2 weeks. DVDs was like 2 days. I forgot to ask about video games, but depending on the video game, hey, it might be a little too long for you to actually finish the game and actually enjoy it. But I still think it's a good option if you're willing to do it. And they had a lot of current games. I've seen, even on the catalog when I was looking up, they had Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero. They had Pikmin 4. They had all the recent 2Ks, Hitman Trilogy. They had Splatoon 3. They had a lot of current games, even Switch 2 games, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and a Switch 1 game, Mario Wonder. Like, they had a lot of these things. Now, of course, a lot of the newer stuff is it's high in demand. Like, when I went to the shelf to check the selection, there wasn't a ton of stuff. A lot of stuff was, getting checked out and everything I saw in the front. But the other cool thing, if you decide to go this route, is, I don't know if every library is the same, but with my library, they're actually in a network of like 20 something libraries. So as long as you have a library card at, whichever library you in your town, you can actually go online, check out the other catalogs for these other places, and they'll actually ship it to your local library, and then you can go pick it up. So again, just another option for people out there that are trying to, save some money on gaming, maybe get games and play them a little closer to release day instead of waiting for a sale. Maybe you don't care about collecting that much or anything like that, and you'll be on your way. It's a good option. But now the other thing I wanted to talk about, as far as libraries, reading books and things like that in regards to gaming goes, is I'm starting to notice, and again, this is probably as you get older, and Mr. Maddie talks about this too, is sometimes we as gamers, we try to spend every second of our lives either gaming or listening to gaming podcasts, or before we go to bed we gotta get an hour in. And something I notice about myself is when it comes to my attention span, when it comes, like, even gaming, I feel like I'm not enjoying them as much. Like, gaming is an art form. Our video games are an art form. These are made by people who sat down for years and developed and built characters in these worlds, and there's so much dialogue and things like that. And I'm noticing with myself, when it comes to certain games, maybe I don't care that much about the world, but I know sometimes I'll see like a bunch of dialogue pop up, or like I'll find something, let's say in a post-apocalyptic game, right, like Stellar Blade or Last of Us, or even Chronos, which I beat recently, and I'll find some recordings, or you find these different hidden collectibles, and they'll tell a story about what happened that you don't actually see in the game. And if it's like 2, 3, 4 pages of I'm just like, bro, I do not want to see it. I see a character creator pop up in the game, I'm just like, bro, I ain't trying to spend an hour making my character. Like, I have gotten such a short attention span when it comes to that, and it extends outside of gaming. But it just made me think about it. I'm like, man, I'm really doing myself a disservice when it comes to this because of two things. Number one, like I said, not really absorbing what is being told here, like the tone of these things and these stories, and what the developers and the writers and what they actually spent so much time trying to craft and put together. I'm just missing out on it, you know what I mean? And do you need it to fully enjoy video games? No. Same thing with TV shows or movies. Like, they'll do little references and stuff like that, and you won't really catch it all the time. But I do like that, like behind the scenes, or when you hear like, oh, this line was improv, or this was a callback to this, that, and the third. Like, I love that kind of stuff. So I really want to get more into that, and that's what I've thought about reading in regards to video games. But on the other side of it, like I mentioned, attention span and just thinking about things I consume on a day-to-day basis. I always think in my mind, I'm like, man, why do people's reading comprehension suck now? Like, why do people, like, we're on our phones all day reading stuff, but then you really think about it, it's like, are we really reading? we're not. We're looking at highlights. We're looking at small clips. We're looking at headlines. We're reading tweets and stuff. Like, we're reading a bunch of segmented information in short little bursts, and half the time it's not broken English, but like slang, abbreviations. It's like not thought provoking. Like, our brains aren't being stimulated, and again, they're fragmented. It's just a bunch of scattered thoughts. When you sit down to actually read a book, you are thinking about the full continuity of the story, the characters, the background, their motivations, how these things are all interwoven and coming together to form a complete circle and story from start to finish. That's what we need to do when it comes to our cognitive dissonance and like all these sorts of things. Again, not to sound like after school special, but bro, books are important. I'm not, there's not breaking news here, but these things are important, and we need to get back into it regardless of gaming. But gaming, I think, can be a good motivation for it. The other thing I was thinking about, I want to also read gaming related books. So when it comes down to book selection, what I want to start off with, I went to the front desk and I said, hey, I want the top 10 books they always have you read, like in high school or whatever. Because in high school, I read a decent amount of the books because you obviously had a test on it, but sometimes you was looking at Spark Notes and Cliff Notes and stuff like that, and not really getting the full story. So, and I read, most of the Shakespeare joints, Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, Midsummer's Night Dream, Julius Caesar, like all that stuff. I read Macbeth, but The Pearl, John Steinbeck, stuff like Animal Farm, things like that. But I wanted to kind of go and revisit either books I missed or books I read already and wasn't really paying attention to it. I want to revisit things with my adult eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like Animal Farm, for like very specifically, that's going to be the first book I reread, as well as 1984. George Orwell did a really good job as far as, social commentary and things like that, and classism and things of that nature. And I think, it's very relevant today. One of my favorite things is when I'm watching documentaries and things that were going on when I was super young, or maybe a few decades before I was born. I'm like, man, this stuff was going on, and like I had no idea. I didn't learn about it. I didn't experience it, anything like that. So I want, like, I'm not a history junkie, but I've wanted to go back and like read stuff about that and how all these things really come to be. And I think it's going to make me a better person as far as, like I said, attention span, appreciating art, all of that kind of stuff. But then as well as when it comes to the gaming world, I think, these stories are, as I said, really thought out and things like that. There are autobiographies or books by game developers that I respect, like Kojima and Cliff Bleszinski and people like that, I would like to read. I've thought about reading the other media, which some of them are like graphic novels and stuff, but the books, like there's Halo media out there. There's, cyberpunk media. There's stuff like that. Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's not gaming, but I'm just saying, like, I already read manga, which is kind of close, but, I do want to kind of start back then and then kind of work my way up to some more recent books and things like that, and kind of bridge the gap when it comes to gaming and understanding writing styles and things like that. I think it'll really help. So that's what I want to talk about today for this episode of Couch Conversations. This was Couch Conversation episode 5. Go watch all my other recent Couch Conversations. Go check out your local library if anything I said kind of entices you, and y'all leave some book recommendations down below, whether it's gaming related or not, or games that really are books that really stood out to you and had an impact on you that you think would, you recommend for other people to get to. And, maybe I'll check it out after I go through my reliving high school journey. But appreciate you guys. Definitely, like I said, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you in the next conversation.